Hey, welcome back to our channel Coding Clean. And today we are going to talk about some of the common mistakes students make when they first start learning C++ language. And the very first of the list, or the very first of the list is the a naming convention. What name should be given to variables, right? So for example, if we declare a variable, we begin with the data type, then we type the name of the variable and semicolon. Now this is a valid name because it follows all the rules that the name of the variable must begin with a letter, and it begins with N is a letter, it's not a digit, right? Or it should begin with the underscore. So if I type underscore, let's say monthly salary, this is the name of the variable, it begins with an underscore, it's valid. It begins with a letter, it is also valid. But for example, if you declare a variable and you say to, and let's call it value, this name is not valid because it violates the rule, and the rule says very clearly that the name of the variable must begin either with a letter or with an underscore, but not with a digit, not with anything else. So if I save changes and if I compile this code, you will see that the first two lines are okay to the compiler, but it says that there is a problem in the third line because it violates the naming conventions, the naming rules for variables. If I remove the digit 2 from this variable and save changes and recompile it, you will see that there is no problem. So this is the first rule, right? You must remember. The second rule is that if your variable consists of two words, the name of the variable consists of two words, there should be no spaces between them. So if I say monthly and then put a space intentionally and then salary, and if I save changes, if I compile the code, it says there is a problem because spaces between the name of the variable is not allowed. So if the name of your variable consists of more than one word, do not put spaces. If you really want to separate these words, you can use underscore, right? So put just underscore between these two and that's fine. If I compile it again, no problem. The compiler is happy, right? So this is the second rule. If the name of the variable consists of more than one word, do not put any spaces between them. Another important rule is that the length of the name should be reasonable. Your variable should not contain, for example, if I say employee underscore college underscore monthly salary, blah, blah, blah. That means that yes, it's a valid name because it begins with a letter and it is valid, but the problem is it's so difficult to type this variable because you might use it in your program and you will be using it in a lot of different places, and then you have to type all this thing again. For example, if I'm going to print the value of this variable, you already know how long it does it take to even type it, salary. It's a lot of work for the programmer, so it should be meaningful, of reasonable length too, right? So just remove this part, and that is a good name because it's meaningful and it is of reasonable length also. So these are the three basic rules for naming variables, right? Another important thing to remember is that if you declare a variable, then you can use it, but do not use the variable before declaration. So for example, I'm saying that cout the value of number and del, and then I declare the number on after the use of the variable. I'm using it here in the cout statement, and I'm declaring it, for example, after that statement. Now if I save changes and compile the code, the compiler is not happy about the first line, and it is absolutely true because the compiler says, I do not know about number. Where have you declared it? And the reason is that the compiler compiles the code from top to bottom and left to right. So it encounters the first line and says, hey, you declared a variable called number, but where is the declaration? Because it didn't actually reach to the the other line which actually declares the variables. So the solution to that is you must declare it first. So I'm going to put it first, and then you can use it in your program. So if I recompile it, the compiler is absolutely happy about it. So always remember to declare the variable first and then use it in your program, right? Another thing that students often ignores is white spaces. And what is a white space? A white space is, for example, the space bar where you hit the space bar button on the keyboard, it put a space. For example, you can see there is a space here, there is a space here as well, there is a space to the left and right of the assignment operator. Remember, these spaces, white spaces, are normally ignored by the C++ compiler, but sometimes if you put a white space in the wrong place, the compiler will complain about it. Let me give you an example of that. For example, if you do not put a white space in the declaration of the variable and you type int and then straight away the name of the variable, and if you compile it, the compiler will say, well, I'm confused. Is it the name of some identifier? Is it the name of some variable? Did you declare it first before it's used? So for example, if I just compile it and it says, oh, there is a problem, right? So it's called tokens or words of the language, right? Predefined words of the language. You have to put a space, just like you write sentences in English, and you say, for example, I live in Pakistan, for example, and you say, okay, let me remove this space and put it here. Now, in Pakistan is not one word, right? So there must be one space between these two. So always remember that spaces does matter. Most of the time it is ignored in case, let me go back. If you put a lot of spaces between these two words in Pakistan, it doesn't matter, right? Because one space or many, no problem. The person who is reading the sentence understand these different words and the meaning of the whole sentence. But sometimes one little space in the wrong place can get you into trouble. An example of that is, for example, if you put a space between hash include and then the angular bracket IOStream, no problem. Okay, I understand this is hash include one command, and then this is the name of the header file. If I save changes and compile the code, no problem. But remember, if I put a space between the name of the header file and the angular bracket, just one space, look what happens. If I recompile the code, the compiler is not happy at all. So be very careful about these white spaces, right? Where to put them and where to not put them, right? And another thing that students are often confused about is that these cout and cin operators, cout is used for outputting or displaying the value of the variable on screen, right? And cin is to take input from the user. See if I put a space between these two angular brackets, which is actually called stream insertion operator. Look what happens if I just compile it. I've broken the token, I've broken the word, I've broken the operator. So no spaces is allowed here. Be very careful about it. But if I put a lot of spaces between this operator and this number, this is one token, one word, and this is also a kind of word we call operator in C++, no problem. The C++ says, I ignore these spaces, it doesn't matter to me. Yeah, that's right. So be very careful about these things. Another thing is, for example, using a namespace in std, 3 different words, no problem. You can put as many spaces as you want, save changes, and no problem whatsoever, right? So remember that spaces does matter in some cases, but not all. Let me give you another very important thing. You might have seen people using different variables, and they say you have to declare all variables on top. It's not required. Whenever you need a variable, just declare it first and then use it in your program. So for example, I say int monthly salary, put some salary, let's say 30,000, and then you can use it, no problem. Salary, this is going to be displayed as it is on screen, and then we put the name of the variable salary and then endl, right? What happens is that, okay, you needed a variable, you declared it, and now you can use it down the code. So if I compile the program, no problem, no issue, and if I run it, you're going to see the output as well. 200 is the value of the first variable called number, and then the salary. And remember, the output is very decent. And how did I do it? You know, if you enclose anything in double quotation mark, it will be printed on monitor screen as it is, including these spaces, where I put more spaces. For example, save changes, recompile the code, and execute the program, you're going to see those spaces here, right? And then after that, I do not enclose the name of the variable. Remember, if you want to display the value that is stored in the variable, do not enclose the name of the variable in double quotation mark. Otherwise, it will be displayed as a string or as a text. So if I enclose it in double quotation, see what happens. If I recompile the code now and execute it, salary colon space and monthly salary. Okay, so that's weird. So all you have to do is to remove those things, because we want to display not this text monthly salary, which is the name of the variable. We want to display the value of the variable, right? And another important thing is, if you want to, for example, some people say don't use these things, it's called chaining. I can do the same thing here, like for example, putting the semicolon, endl, then type cout again, then semicolon, and then cout again. It does exactly the same thing, right? So it first says, okay, the first cout statement is going to display this thing, and let me remove these spaces. It was for demonstrating that point. And then after that, it's going to display the value on one line, remember, because there is no endl here. And then at the end, I'm going to put endl. So if I save changes, recompile the code and execute it again, the same output, but this time I'm using, more statements. It's not a good practice at all. Whenever you want to do it, just do it in one line. Cout monthly salary colon space, it will be displayed as it is. Then again, chain it, and then say the name of the variable, which actually stores the value, and then endl, right? So it is exactly the same as before, but I'm doing it in one line using one cout statement. It way more better than the other. So compile it again and then run it again, and that's the output, right? And another thing that I would like to explain here is that you might have seen some IDEs where people don't pass void here. It's all right, it's optional, but again, a good practice is to put void here. Normally, there are something called command line arguments that I will talk about in the future videos, which is something like int arg c char star arg v, because we haven't studied the pointer stuffs and all that stuff, so I just pass void. That simply means that this function main does not take any argument. What are arguments? We're going to definitely talk about it in the future videos. So this is the thing. And sometimes you might see people on YouTube writing code where there is no return and they still work. Yes, it is. Right, no error, no warning. If you run it, you're going to see the output. But the problem is that the IDE on your behalf put return 0, which you don't see it. A good practice is to get into the habit of writing it yourself, because some IDEs may not accept it. Some IDEs or some compilers may object that there is a missing statement, remember? So that's it for today, I think. And what else can I teach you? One more important thing. That is, if you do not use the using namespace std, you might have seen people, right? You compile the code, there is an error, and there will be lots of errors, of course, because cout and endl, basically, they are from this header file. But within this header file, there is a block called std, block of code, for example, something like this, namespace std, and then their cout is defined and cn is defined and blah, 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 right? So we have to tell the compiler that where these commands are in the header file. So if you do not use using namespace std, then you have to manually type std : everywhere you are using something from the IOStream file, std. That's very tedious to type, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. And endl is here, so I'm gonna say, okay, std is also in the in the standard namespace. If I recompile it, okay, it works. Yes, it definitely does. If I run it, yeah, that's the same output. But the problem is that if you are going to use a lot of cout statements and a lot of endls and cn also, which I will talk about in this video, then you have to put std everywhere you use cout or cn or endl. It's a lot of typing. I will definitely do that. So I'm going to hit Control Z, and then I will just simply come here and say using namespace std, right? And then I don't have to type std with each and every command from the IOStream header file. That's it. I think today I want to tell you about the the cn statement. Cn stands for console input. It takes input from the keyboard. How does it take input from the keyboard? Of course, when your program is executed, you must have displayed a message to the user to type an integer or some string value or some character value, etc. Then the user types something on the keyboard, and it takes that value, cn takes the value from the keyboard and store it in some variable that you have declared. So I'm going to declare a variable called number. There is nothing in this variable. I haven't initialized it. I'm going to simply display the message on screen in double quotation mark, enter a number, right? And then cn is going to take the value from the keyboard, whatever the value is typed by the user, and it's going to store it in this number. Sometimes you can think of these operators as, look, the direction of this is that take whatever I have enclosed here and move it to the cout, and cout basically represent the screen of your monitor, and cn represents the keyboard, and it says, okay, whatever you have typed, I'm going to store it in this variable, right? So you type the name of the variable to the right of this operator. By the way, it's called stream extraction operator, and cn is going to take the input from the keyboard, store it in there, and then let me show you that whatever you have typed, what value? This value, right? Number, and l, and remove this. Okay, so okay, the message will be displayed as you have typed space colon space, and then whatever value is stored by cn from the keyboard in this number. So if I save changes and compile the code, no problems, and then I'm going to execute the program. Enter a number. Let me type my favorite number 700 and hit enter, and it says you have typed 700. So that's how you take input from the keyboard, right? If I run it again, and this time I enter 500, enter. Okay, cout takes this value 500, store it in the variable called number, as you can see here, and then we are displaying whatever value is stored in the number. Remember, if you enclose something in cout statement in double quotation mark, it will be displayed as a message, as it is, no changes made. And if you want to display the value of the variable, do not enclose the name of the variable in quotation mark. If you enclose it, for example, what's going to happen? Let's see. You will not see the value of the variable, but rather the name of the variable. So if I recompile it and I execute it, I say 500, and you have typed number. Oh my God. We have typed 500, not a number. So we are going to remove the quotation mark from the name of the variable. Now it's going to display whatever is stored in this variable. Save changes, run it again. But before that, you have to compile it. And then again, let's say 200. You have typed 200. Dear students, that's enough for today. Try to practice on your own and try to follow these rules, and you will have no problem. Thanks for watching, and if you don't understand anything, then you should mention that problem in the comment section, and I will answer it in the next video. See you next time. Happy coding.